But I may brusquely turn you off and say, talk to me later. Because we got two people to go through here. This is Mark, I'm Doug. And I'm going to talk about the summer-led line, and he's going to talk about the non-summer-led lines. And we're going to make a big sales pitch to try to get you to spend some money. If you do want to spend some money, you should spend the money before August the 31st, because our main testing company is having a gigantic sale that lasts through the 31st. How many of you have already tested with our project? Okay, you haven't. First, our project is only for men, so if you don't have a, so if you're a lady, you can test with us, but it won't do any good for you. You'll get the test, and you'll get exactly the same information if you didn't test for us, but we have nothing yet to offer for you. We'd love to have things to offer for you.
But I mean, fact, what we do is we say look for a male line.
No, let me finish. Let me finish. In fact, if you're a female, we recommend that you test with Ancestry.com and not FamilyTreeDNA.com. That's the simple take-home message. If you want to learn about your heritage, Ancestry.com is the go-to place. Read it there. Not the others, not 23andMe, at least in terms of learning your McDonald heritage. Go to Ancestry. 23andMe tests more people, but it doesn't help as much. Okay, so this is a chart explaining what we've done in the project here for summer-led people. Summer-led's at the top. It's that box that's cut off. And this is the genealogy chart from Family Tree Maker of summer-led for the people in our project who have paper trails all the way back from them to the end. And the bottom line has little DNA symbols for people. Now, all of these people have taken DNA tests in our standard DNA tests. The people with the little DNA icons here have tested a big, important test called the Big Y, which tests you really carefully, and it discovers new markers that are just in your group, and that's how we determine what subgroup of the summer-led descendants you are. For example, I figured out how to do this, thanks to this is Sir Ian Godfrey. This is Allen Valley of Slate. So if you match him, your main line is Slate. If you match this one, you're Valley. If you match him, you're Glengarry. And somewhere around here, I don't know, that's Glengarry. And
that'll be Clanrandall.
Where is Clanrandall? Yeah, that's Clanrandall.
No, here's Clanrandall.
There's Clanrandall. But anyway, this is a sales pitch. There aren't very many of you here. Does any of you here know who your ancestors are all the way back? Oh, but do you have a brother?
Yes.
You know who your...
I'm not playing Donald, though.
What?
Okay.
I'm not a Donald.
Oh, well, then it won't do us any good.
That's
Okay,
right.
but if you know, yeah, so it's not going to... So my sales pitch doesn't work, at least this time around. We'll try. So anyway.
Could we go back for a second? Let's talk for a second about what SNPs are that you're measuring.
Oh,
because,
I really don't want to try to...
No, just briefly. The SNP is the circle inside the DNA, or the line itself inside the DNA. We started out measuring STRs, which are the fuzzy edge around the DNA, where you can measure the length of the hairs on the side of the DNA. But then the SNP goes for 10 million, roughly, points inside the DNA and measures changes inside. Now, you're going to get to the chart, right?
Well, let me just say this. The thing is, the difference is that the STRs, which are the original tests you take, can mutate either way, back or forward. So they're not definitive. Just think of these things, which this test measures, is a SNP, is definitive.
It only goes one
One way.
So therefore, these are more reliable than the STRs. When we started out with just STRs, we were starting out with 9 things that we were testing. By the time that we could get 111. I mean, that's how much the growth has been in this 18 years of the project.
But this gives you 10 million.
But this gives you 10 million by comparison.
Right. For the part I'm talking about, which is the summer-led descendants, we can tell you, for many people, which clan subgroup you are. For people who are R1B, not so much, but he's going to talk about that. For people who aren't R1A or R1B, these are, you don't need to know what those words mean. You just need to remember them, okay?
Well, they're groups.
They're groups, yeah. They're
That's
big groups.
R1A is Eastern Europe, and R1B is Western Europe.
Well, yeah, R1A is mostly Eastern. R1A is mostly Eastern Europe, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. That it came from there. And, well, the Icelandic sagas tell the story. The kings of the Swedes that came from the east. They came from over there in Kazakhstan. And they grew and prospered and had a descendant that became a Norse Viking. Conquered that area in Scotland where the clan Donald lived, and somehow we became Norse Vikings. We urge you to buy the proper test for determining these SNPs, and then it'll tell you what group you are. To the next one here. Let's not go through that.
Well, that's the key price.
Oh, I say that. I say
That's the $395 as opposed to normally
There we go.
500 and...
But the other thing is, if you haven't tested at all, which some of you haven't, the normal test that we suggest is the 67 marker, which is currently on sale for $139, which is a good price. But if not, a lot, and you know other clan Donald people, we recommend a very simple test from a different company, and oh, I should say, all of this will be put on our website, and you can just go reread it. There's an alternative procedure I suggest. You can always, this is for people who have any of you tested, not with our project, but with some other genealogy company like Ancestry.com or 23andMe? No. Okay, so it doesn't matter. But what you can do, what's going on here? What in the hell? You can find out if you're a descendant of Summerled, a male line descendant of Summerled, for $18 by buying one single test for $18. It's called YP327. Don't try to remember it. It'll be on the website. And from a different company, okay? It's called yseq.net. You might want to remember that. It'll be there too. But if you test what is called positive, there are only 2 states, this positive and negative. And if you're positive for this marker, you're a descendant of Summerled. And then we have procedures. Again, don't.
Well, but now let's get back into the Y, the big Y, because these numbers are big Y numbers.
These are the numbers of the SNP test that the big Y, those people I showed you have tested, CERT-E and the Glengarry chief. They have done these tests, And we've discovered these markers. And so, if you are test positive for CLD 62 or 63, you branch off from the main line a couple of generations. Is that right?
Yeah.
A couple of generations before Summerlin, and we have several people, including our Red Master, who is in that category. The YP326 test tells you that you are a descendant of Summerlin, but not necessarily. You may be, but are not necessarily. You definitely are a descendant of Summerlin, and you may or may not be a descendant of John, the first Lord of the Isles.
Right. But the intervening step is, remember, it's Summerlin, Ranald, Donald, Angus Moore. So that's 4 generations, and he's able to pick out 4 generations after Summerlin with that particular test.
And then,
here's the big branch.
and here's the big branch, is John, the first Lord of the Isles. There is a marker for that called CLD 56, but most unfortunately, due to the nature of it, it cannot be tested by anything except by this big Y thing, which is currently $395 and normally $575. So most people can't afford or don't want to pay for this one. But then there are other markers beyond that, through the 3 sons of
And the interesting part is the Clanranald or Glengarry marker.
yeah.
You actually are picking up Clanranald or Glengarry's father with that marker. And that's why we can't tell which of the 2 branches it goes down until you go further.
Yeah, now this is a very important marker, because most people that are Summerlin people end up in our group somehow are mostly Clanranald or Glengarry. Now, we don't know why there's so many of them, but he may know. The history knows. Well, but the DNA doesn't know.
They're one of the oldest branches of the clan.
Yeah. So there is a test for Clanranald, but again, it's called CLD 50, but again, it cannot be tested by the cheap test. You have to take the expensive test, which is most unfortunate. But then there are other groups that are part of Clanranald. There isn't a SNP for Kinloch Moidart, and we have several people who are Kinloch Moidart. There are SNPs for various unknown subgroups of Clanranald. If you test positive for any of these, you are Clanranald. This is the big news we have this year for the meeting here, is that we have found a SNP for Glengarry. So now you can tell if you're Glengarry. We didn't have, until recently, we didn't know anybody except the Glengarry chief was. But we found this, and we have. Then, if you're CLD 18, you're Slate. If you're CLD 18 and CLD 27, you're Valor. And there are a couple of others for Slate people. We have lots of other Slate people who we don't know what sub-branch of Slate they are, but they're Slate. For the other clan groups, Clan Donald South, we don't know for sure, but we have a guess that, based on family tradition, that CLD 25 is Clan Donald South, or L175. I'm L175. And we think it might be Clan Donald South, but we need somebody to test that knows. Antrim, the Lords of Antrim. You'd think that we could tell through the tests on the royal line, but it's not the same line.
Well, The Antrim line is no longer a McDonald line.
Yeah, they got
changed
both.
their name from Kerr to McDonald.
So they're actually Kerrs.
Yes, right.
But we need somebody that's in our clan that's in that line to test. And then there are other groups that we know, there are other people who have taken the Big Y. We know they're slate. And these are markers for them. And if you test this marker, you know that you're closely related to them. But we don't know. There are other groups, for example, Tulloch we know about. Glen Allendale we will soon know about. Glen Allendale tests are in progress. Tulloch we know. But they're not. They're celebrations.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing you can do, again, most of you will not be interested. There are not a lot of people here today. But what I've done is design this. The Big Y is normally very expensive, but it turns out that because so many people are clan round, that I've designed this little chart. So if you determine, if you test the CLD 26 marker, if your test negative for CLD 26, 326, you're not a Summerled person, but you are a Norse Viking. And there are other groups of Norse Vikings, which would be very interesting. And so if you're 326 minus, if you test 327 plus, you take these other tests and you tell which group you're in. If you're 327 minus, you take these two tests. If you're 280 minus, it says that you're just right at the root of the Norse Vikings. You're really a Norwegian. And then you just follow along. You go down, and then you go across testing one at a time. Of course, this takes a long time to test, because it takes about a week for these tests, 2 weeks to go through. So it could take you 3 months to reach through the whole chart.
Right.
But on average, there are only 5 tests.
For 5 tests, you're getting by for $87.50, which is considerably cheaper than the full.
Yeah, but it's only for special people. I mean, it's for people that test positive for being
Right.
some of it. The other thing, I mean, there's an alternative method for doing this that starts with clan Randall. There are so many people that are clan Randall and think they're clan Randall that you can either start with this one, CLD 12, which is clan Randall, or YP 326, and follow it. It's basically similar. So I'll post these.
Right, and more importantly, you can contact it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the big deal.
Through
the big thing
what do I
is
need to test?
contact us if you have the slightest question.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I think, let's see what else we have. One more here. No, that's all the end of my part. So let him talk, and I'm going to try to find a slide for him.
Okay, well, can we get the McDonald chart for R1B first?
Can you pick that?
Sure, of course I can.
Try to find that.
Because basically, I don't know how many of you have been to our website, but if you click on SNPs, the SNP tests, first you'll see the R1A results, and then down below it you'll see the R1B results. R1B basically split from R1A about 40,000 years ago, give or take, somewhere around Kazakhstan, tell you what, Doug, why don't you, instead of hunting for that, why don't you just find me the chart for the, for McDonald USA?
Which chart?
The big one. The one on the website.
Oh, you mean the R1B chart?
Yes.
Oh, that I can do.
Okay, good. Because what we'll do is we'll start off on what we call the far right.
No.
Yeah, well, keep hunting. We'll start off on the far right, And that is what we consider a Danish marker. It's U106. It's one of the first great breaks within R1b. If you are U106, it's a Germanic type marker. But there were no Saxons in Clandon territory. There were Danes. And so we can pretty well mark that group as a Danish group. What would be a reasonable guess if you do show up as a U106? Well, one prospect would be that Summerled hired a whole bunch of Danish sailors who were living in Dublin in order to attack the Glasgow region. Other than that, the Danes and the Norwegians didn't get along very well, and accordingly, that would be the single point in our history that I can point to that would be a positive Danish type influence, and that would be like 1064. Then let's, well, this is harsh. Yeah, because I was hoping I'd have this list.
What list do you need?
I need the R1b list.
The chart.
The chart, yeah.
Okay, it's up.
It's up. Da-da-da, okay, good.
No, that's the R1A chart.
Yeah, all right, let's just come a little bit further down. There we go. All right, let's go further to the right, because we're still talking. Oh, now let's talk about what this crazy chart is. Doug has a program that that provides him an orderly list of all the SNPs. You remember we were looking at like 10 million changes in the genome. What each of these is one that he deems to be, well, how do you describe it? The process by which you pick out which of the 10 million changes count.
I don't want to discuss that.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, well, the idea is that we simply go through them and try to determine which ones are reliably tested by the tests that we employ. There's some that are reliably tested and some that sometimes work and sometimes don't work. And we don't want to put the ones, unless we absolutely have to, that generally or frequently don't work on our tree. And so we use a scientific procedure to see which ones are reliable by examining the raw data.
Right. But basically, each time you see a clip here, roughly 100 to 130 years have passed in terms of history.
Right, so these people branched off from this person here. These people branched off, what would you say, 2,500 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. Okay,
You can figure it out.
Yeah, let's shift it over now, because we then get to the pale reds and the pale blues.
There they are.
Keep coming. No, we're still at olive black.
No, there's red. No, yeah, okay.
Not red blue. Because Doug has had to break the thing, keep coming, has had to break the thing down into so many different subgroups.
It's not.
Will it do it?
How does it? I don't know.
That's okay. Keep coming. As you can see, we've had quite a few. Keep coming. There we're going. A little more.
No.
A little more.
No, it's not working.
Okay.
No, it will work. Keep going.
Keep going.
We're into the olives.
Now, and by the way, the way to read this thing is, for instance, this is probably P312 way up.
That is, that's correct.
Right. Oh, here's U106. Good. Here's my Danes. All right. and we've got 3 of those samples. Then this group would be P312, and this goes all the way across. This is the bulk of the R1A group, R1B group, within our group. But now here, you'll see pale blue. Below that, it reads Glencoe. And you say, well, how can Glencoe both be in R1A and in R1B? Well, the answer is that Angus went and sired a daughter on the McCoys, which means son of the king. And the McCoys have a history that they are Pictish. So here we have right in the middle of this 2 groups a nice Pictish line, because around 1550 the Somerled line died out. Well, who was there? Well, all of his cousins who just happened to be Picts. And so there's a very nice book that breaks down the Glencoe line, and that I think we can deal with as basically good, reliable Picts. And then we have these others basically surrounding them down to about here that I think we can say are pretty reliably Pictish lines. That's about the only Pictish lines that we find in Clandonald. Now, then, as we come on over here to the olive, these are the Bowies and McDonalds, right in through here. And once again, we can trace, and you'll note what this means is these numbers are common to all of the individual ones down below. So as you try to count up to common ancestry, you have to count not only boom, 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 but also this group, in order to get up to a common group. This group differs from the rest of the groups in the sample by something like 4,400 years, which is one of the reasons, once again, we go, everything else on this side looks Irish. Here's this group that came over, it's separated 4,400 years ago, and you go, Pict. Okay. Now, so Bowies and McDonalds are over through roughly here. All of these, from roughly here over, are L21 positive. L21 is a number you should remember because it's the bulk of the people in the clan. And guess what? 94% of the current Irish are L21. So once again, we go, and you come to the conclusion that the bulk of the clan is of original Irish derivation, which is, of course, what history tells us in the first place. So, as we... go ahead, sure.
Mark?
Yeah.
But don't you need to mention M222?
Oh, well, we're just getting to it. Yes, but as a matter of fact, if you will skip, can you move this cursor
To the right.
to the right so that we see the red, blue, and blue-green, which is a huge group. Keep coming. Oh, no, wait. Let's see. No, somehow we went by it. I'm sorry.
That's your group there.
Yeah, this is my group. I'll get to there. But there is a very large group called M222.
And what color are they?
They're red, blue, and blue-green.
They're part of
and that's what we call the O'Neill group. As a shorthand. It basically means it came from northwestern Ireland. It's just a little bit west of Derry, up in the peninsula where Ireland turns and goes north. And we have this very large red-blue group that, it's probably 75 members of Klan that we've tested. Right. And that group goes back somewhere 3,000 years by the time you get up to this level. So it's older than Neil of the Nine Hostages, but it clearly included the Neil of the Nine Hostages. And Neil's people were so prolific in Ireland that they're the ones that pushed the Cala Uas to leave Ireland and follow Somerled over to fight the Picts in Scotland. So they basically, the whole clan, the whole little piece, emigrated from Ireland to Scotland around 830 AD. So basically, that's the group within the clan that has the red blue.
Question.
Yes, sure.
Just, so now you have discussed the historical part, at least from legend,
Right.
poetry and so forth, of the O'Neill heritage on the male line.
Yes.
But at the same time, you have said Somerled, our ultimate ancestor, was probably
Norse. That's right.
Norwegian, whatever.
Right.
So I'm not getting how both can be correct.
Well, because Somerled had followers. Somerled's 8th great-grandfather was named Godfrey McFergus, which is a really strange name because Godfrey is a totally pagan name. It means Godfrey, God, friend. And McFergus is obviously quite an Irish name. Godfrey McFergus married into Cala Uas. So there was a female line from the Cala Uas, there was a male line from Godfrey. We can trace the male line, that's what Doug does in terms of R1A, but we know that the female line existed. We know that a combined fighting force that was called simply a foreign army defeated the Picts in 834, something like that. And so what did you have? You had a mixture of crazy Irishmen and wild Vikings attacking a Pictish army. And they were working together. This is at least a part of the crazy Irish that came along with the Cala Uas, and they're very common in our clan. They're very common in the McDougals, which of course, McDougall is a branch of Somerled, but once again they came along
So
for
they
the
are
ride.
in the clan, but they are descendant of O'Neill.
They're of O'Neill types.
O'Neill
Yes,
types, okay.
right.
But they are not descendant of
Somerled.
or his immediate relative.
That's correct. And for instance, I am an R1P, and just as a matter of fact, there's my group. Let's see, wait a minute. I should be pale violet black. Let's skip to, where is pale violet? That's a good close.
You're pale violet or pale violet black?
I'm pale violet black. Here we are. Here we are.
Pale violet black is a little bit bigger than your group.
Yes, yes. But next we come over and we're getting into, I refer to as the Dalriadic Royal Movement, which came from Ireland, originally from southwestern Ireland, according to the history of Ireland. There was a settlement of a great war between Con of the Hundred Battles and Nude of the Silver Hand. And Nude's right-hand man was...
Here's your group.
Yeah. There, that's my little group there. And this whole area is part of the Ionic Royal line. Now, there are a few surprises in terms of who comes down from the Ionic Royal line. For instance, the Campbells, which break off at something called FGC 10125. Our group, which is the 744s, 764, and then breaks into, and then that's for McDonald. And over here, you will see a 691 group. I think it may be over here it is. That's a McGregor group. Now, does that mean that they're McGregors? No, it doesn't. That means that they have one of the very early markers characteristic of the McGregors, just like the McCutcheons have a very early marker of the Campbells. Only they're on Skye. There was never a Campbell presence on Skye. They followed our leadership. This would be back maybe 1,000 years that they would be proto-McGregors, or 1,000 years earlier they would be proto-Campbells. Now, my group in here, for instance, is somewhat closer related to the Campbells. Let's first say, let's recall, as we go back here and we say, God, 1,000 years, that's a long time. Well, that's about the period of Angus Moore. That's about the period of Donald. So what you're doing is you're going back to the very roots of where the clan was formed and how the clan was formed. Then off from here, from the 764, is another new marker called S756. Unfortunately, we don't have this chart, and that's okay, I'll talk about it. They are a subsequent mutation, and there is a big group of McDonalds in that are closely related to my pale violet lattice. Indeed, one of the very beginnings, back when we were measuring 9 markers, I was told by the geneticist from Holland that meant we were close. Well, I said, how close? He said, close. It turned out that Hugh McDonald, who was the most frequent matched person, one of the most frequent matched persons in the whole genetic project, is related to me. And so I trotted up to Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, and we sat down at the kitchen table, and we were trying to figure out, how close. Well, turns out to be about 20 to 22 generations close. But in that group of McDonald's, we also find some interesting other clans. The McCoys, which is Mackay. And the way that you say son of Hugh is Mackay. That's all that means, it's son of Hugh. And we, of course, have the sons of Hugh in our slave range. But it was a common name. But so the Hatfields and the McCoys are once again about 20 generations back for me, from my list. Who else do we find? Glenn Lyon Campbell. Oh, well, that's the fellow that the Glengarrys and the Glencoes stripped of his property in a major raid, who then was impoverished enough that he became part of the Royal Army and led the mass Glencoe. So, you know, it's kind of, you never know when you look what you find. And in my case, you find a Glen Lyon Campbell, who is not quite the normal Campbell. He's part of our special sub 744, 764 group. There he is sitting. But some of the other interesting family names, for instance, that you don't associate at all with our clan, include names like Robinson, Bissett, Stewart, McLean, whole groups that are part of this Dowryotic world tree. Now, why am I particularly interested in this other branch of the Dowryotic royal tree? Well, we know in the 15th century, the family of Ian Rua, which was the progenitor of the McDonalds of Glenmoriston, who were the hereditary bodyguards to the Lords of the Isles. That's my ancestor. So I can actually point to a specific ancestor, but then I go, well, what century did he live in? People mention that he had 5 sons. People mention that he was the hereditary Lord of the Isles. But am I looking in the 13th century, the 12th century, the 11th century? Where am I looking for this guy? Well, this group, by the way, held about 100,000 acres of land stretching from Glenmoriston along the Loch Ness all the way over to Cluny, down one of the major roads to the Isles. What we have fortunately or unfortunately found from this other sub-branch way down here that's not shown on this chart is somebody has found a headstone that says Clan Ian Rua. Well, now that's a branch of the clan that is even not known right now. And so what I'm now guessing, because it's in that group that's 20 generations back, is that Ian was back at the point in time of living at the time of Donald, and was, from which that group descends. Okay, let me try to get at least some degree of, oh yeah, and another name on that sheet is the McCoys, which, were our up time. We're up. Oh, okay, fine. Which ran Ellen Donnan and were the shield of the Mackenzies, just in the same role that the McDonalds of Glenmoriston functioned as the shield of the Lord of the Isles. It turns out to be sort of a cantankerous fighting branch coming down the tree. Okay, I'm told we're out of time, but were there any questions? Did this baffle you with bullshit? No.
So I just wanted to
Sure.
point out, so I was following the Hamilton DNA project. I assume that you have a similar setup so that when you go, you can find the most common and recent ancestor of certain participants. So of the participants that you already have, are you able to say, find a person who knows his ancestor back to, say, 6 generations? You have another participant who has no paper trail.
That's right, and you can therefore say, yes, if there are a common...
DNA ends up on the same markers as the person with the good paper trail.
Then you can trace.
kind of hook on there.
Right, and I apologize, because some of these, I'm talking about some of these deep relationships, but some of these relationships you'll see only differ 1 or 2 generations, or 1 or 2 mutations, which would be within, say, 230 years, which is the precise way for you you to test. If you and a cousin want to, or a proposed cousin want to test, what you have to do is run these two tests, and you can confirm relationships that you can't prove genealogically.
That was the great